You know what you should do? You should follow me on Twitter at Brommer018. Link in the description. Do it now. Hi everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. I'm Ash, aka Brommer, and we are today beginning a brand new series. Now, any regular subscribers on the channel will of course know my FIFA 21 Tactics series, and that is a series where I recreate real systems in-game and just sort of show you how they work. So I've been toying with the idea of really putting this onto PES as well, and we've finally really decided to put that into action today. So we're going to begin with Pep Guardiola's Barcelona system. I thought really sort of a hallmark system, so it's best to sort of start off with a bang, and that's what we went with. In particular, what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at his system in the latter years. It did change slightly here and there. We're looking at the one where Messi sort of came into that central role and played that false nine. So really sort of 2010, 2011 is when this sort of took place. So yeah, anyone new to the series, any PES fans coming over for the first time, welcome. Thanks for joining. What we do here is, obviously it'll be a little bit different on PES compared to FIFA. We don't have such player instructions, for example, individual player instructions like we do on FIFA. But what we do have is we have a far more in-depth team tactical screen, so we can really help affect what the team do as a whole. So that is very, very good in itself. So yeah, what we'll do is first off we'll start off with any position changes, and we do have one. So with the formation, naturally we go for the normal 4-3-3 with the one defensive midfielder and you have the two central midfielders. However, as you'll notice, we have made a slight change. Yes, we do have Busquets at a defensive midfielder, obviously, but here where we've got Coutinho and he's sort of playing the Andres Iniesta role, we've actually moved him up to attacking midfield. So yeah, of course, we've got the front three. We've got Busquets, we've got De Jong, who's playing that more Xavi role, and we've got Coutinho playing the Iniesta role, as I mentioned. And what the thinking here is, one, with Xavi, you often find him, yes, getting into those intricate areas, but mainly he'd often drop into pockets of space left on the wings in the deep positions and pick up there. And you can do that as a central midfielder very well, particularly with the fullbacks going forward. But with Iniesta, whilst he would occasionally drop off, generally what you'd find is he would be getting into those more advanced areas and picking up pockets of space, you know, a lot closer to the front three. And you tend to find that is far better, far more efficiently replicated when you move him up to an attacking midfield position. What you find is when they're in centre midfield, there's just too much of a gap between the midfielders and the forwards. So, you know, ultimately, even when you've got a false nine as well, you do want him just pushing up that little bit more. So it does help to, you know, really recreate that position well. I should also say a disclaimer for that I missed at the start of the video. You know, my PES ability is average at best. So do try and bear with me with the gameplay wise. You know, you'll often see merged with the fact that Data Pack 5.0 that's out right now is a mess. You know, it doesn't make for the best of viewing, but we do win in the end. So of course that's the most important thing, isn't it? Really. So yeah, do just bear that in mind. So that's really it for the position changes. Now I think it's time that we can get into the meat of the video. So we'll start off with attacking instructions, and we'll generally just work our way down. I think it's probably the best way to do it. So first off, attacking style, naturally a possession game, and I don't really need to go into too much detail about this. We all know how they play. They try and play through the thirds, obviously having an emphasis on vertical you know, passes. You know, a lot of people think it's about just controlling possession. It's not the case with the Guardiola system. They are still trying to always look for a pass forward all the time, you know, and the movement sort of helps them do that. And we can couple that in with the short pass build-up as well. Naturally, a lot of players coming short and, you know, offering that sort of option. They want to try and build up vertically, but also they don't want to be taking too many risks with big long balls. They want to retain possession. And Guardiola often says, it's also the best way to defend as well, by keeping the ball. Because then obviously the opposition can't score, barring a massive disaster. So you also have to bear that one in mind as well. Attacking area, we have this on centre. So naturally they're obviously very deadly on the sides. You've got your wing backs, you've got your wingers as well, which would have been the likes of Pedro and David Villa, etc. A whole range of different players, Alexis Sanchez. But generally they're trying to force through play up the field, and those wing-sided players, the players on either side, are there as sort of supporting cast, and will generally, in particular the wingers, will come into central areas anyway. So that's really where you can do sort of the bulk of your controlling the game. With positioning, we have this on maintain formation. It's often sort of misconstrued that because they're obviously playing such an expansive attacking way, that often players will be sort of moving around all over the pitch, and it's not quite the case. I'll always point back to something I watched with Thierry Henry a long time ago. I think it was on Monday Night Football with Carragher and Neville, etc. He talked about how he was positioned on the left, and he wasn't seeing much of the ball. So in one game he decided to come over to the right just of his own accord. He scored, but Guardiola was so annoyed with him because he left his position that he took him off. He substituted him. And so it's always worth bearing this in mind. Yes, you occasionally have in this system Messi dropping off, but it's all regimented. It's all something that's part of the plan. That you're not going to have players all over the pitch just rotating, taking up any position on the pitch, free roaming. It's just not quite the case. There's a lot more structure to it than what people believe, really. So you do have to bear that one in mind. And finally, with support range all the way down to 1 to give your players the best chance of retaining possession as much as possible. Obviously, there'll be a lot more short passing options in this sort of 1 raise compared to if you were up to 10, and they'd be too far away. So it all complements itself and works out very well. Moving on to defensive instructions next. First off, we have frontline pressure, and it's important to note that it was more of a counter press than an actual extreme gegenpressing system. Now we do have gegenpress on, but in the advanced instructions, which we'll come on to shortly. But it's worth remembering that they sort of, Konami and PES, have gegenpressing sort of differently. What we're talking about here is a counter press, and that's what they would employ. And what that involves is when they would lose a ball, they would then press immediately for a few seconds. I think it was, what was it, the 7 or 8 second rule, something like that, where they would try for a certain amount of seconds to win the ball back, and if they didn't get it back, which often they did anyway, then they would bed back into their shape. But you do just bear that in mind. You're not pressurizing all the time. You're more looking to instigate that counter press. With the containment area, we have this on wide. Naturally, you don't want teams to play through you, and this is what the majority of teams will do. In fact, most. You're never looking to cut off the wide areas and try and get the team to play through the middle. Very rarely, because ultimately it's a lot easier for someone to score, for the opposition to score, if they go through the middle. You want them to try and go out wide and crowd out those middle areas, because then it just becomes a lot harder to score, particularly when you're playing someone who might be forced into crossing situations and they don't want to be. So yeah, with that containment area out wide, and definitely worth bearing that in mind. Next up, on to pressuring. We have this on aggressive. This again couples in with the whole frontline pressure and counter pressing thing. One thing we should sort of mark here is that it's something that has sort of gone with Guardiola wherever he's been, is how often the defenders will try and step out as well, in order to try and win the ball back and maintain that sort of pressure. And it's something we try and replicate in the gameplay as much as possible. So yeah, worth bearing that one in mind as well. All plays into the whole aggressive pressing sort of system. With defensive line, we have this all the way up to 10. Naturally, when you are going to press and when you're in possession of the ball a lot and you want to do your work high at the pitch, you're going to have a high defensive line to couple with that. you know, to go with that. So that complements it in the best way possible. Of course, you can have this down to 8 if you wish, which is something we do on our FIFA videos as well. Just because if you're worried about the sort of approach of the opposition, maybe they're playing balls in behind, balls over the top, and they can use the pace to beat you, because you do still have a high line even on 8. But we did move this all the way up to 10. I found it in testing, you know, I didn't have too much of a problem with it. Naturally, it will depend on the players that you have on your disposal, whether or not they are pacey at the back. With compactness, this is actually on 5, slap bang in the middle. And what you have to remember is that when you are someone like Barcelona, for example, and the fullbacks, the wing backs are going to be getting quite wide and stuff, there's a lot of movement from the front three. What you'll find is that naturally they are going to be in a lot of wide areas. If you have this all the way down, all the way up even to 10 and have it really compact, you're going to be sort of utilizing a lot more stamina and a lot more energy levels. You're going to be decreasing them more. And the reason being is that they're constantly having to shift from wide to middle to wide to middle to wide to narrow. And as a result, it's just a lot of needless expended energy. It doesn't complement it very, very well. So we have this on 5 because that way, you know, you're not too open like you would be if you were on level 1. But you can still limit, again, what we spoke about earlier, those sort of middle attack options for the opposition, and as a result you can sort of cut them off as best as possible. So that's it for the attacking and defensive instructions. Finally, we come on to advanced instructions. We only have 3 on here. Slightly annoying that with PES in general that we can't have more, because we would like to, so we are limited to 2, but nevertheless it does help to you know, sort of replicate the system as best as we can. So attack 1, we have attacking fullbacks on. Now in his Man City days now, his fullbacks play a slightly different role, particularly the likes of Kyle Walker. He comes in a lot more and inverts himself and is less likely to sort of storm forward because he's countering any counter-attacking threats from the opposition. However, back in the Barcelona days, it wasn't quite like that. The wing-backs would get forward a lot more, and in turn, you would find, obviously, the wide wingers coming into the central areas more in order to crowd out those central areas that we spoke about earlier. They want to try and build up through the central areas as much as possible, and so as a result we have attacking fullbacks in order to complement this. The fullbacks will push forward and then the wingers will move into the centre, so that is in turn is very, very nice. Also, you'll then get Sergio Busquets or Frenkie de Jong maybe bedding into the defence when they need to, which is very, very handy, and it's something that does replicate what they did in real life as well. Often Busquets would come into you know, those sort of deep areas to pick up the ball, etc., form a back three when they needed to. That's how they tried to counter any sort of threats of opposition counter-attacking systems, by instead getting the holding midfielder, the pivot, to sort of drop in, or occasionally it would be Xavi as well, sort of picking up those balls. With the second attacking advanced instruction, we have false 9. So naturally, we spoke about it at the start of the video. This is the system we're trying to replicate, where Messi would be the central figure and more of the false 9, and so naturally we can do that. Then you'll find that the wingers, after cutting inside, will then run in behind as well. So they do, basically they're just angling their runs, and that's what we're trying to recreate here. So he does a very good job of that. You know, then you can get them into those more advanced positions as a result. With false 9 as well, getting Messi into the best position possible, you know, get him on the ball more. That's what you can do with that tactic, and it's so important because naturally he is the best player. So, you know, do bear that one in mind as well. And finally, we have just one advanced instruction on defense, and that is the gegenpress. I alluded to it at the start of the video, and that was a gegenpress is a more extreme press. But on PES, it's more about when they lose possession, immediately they're trying to win it back and put a lot of pressure on. But it doesn't mean that they will press all the time. You're not constantly swarming the opposition. So do bear that in mind. That's done more from when you switch the attacking and defensive settings in game. You know, when you hold LT or L2 and you move the D-pad up or down, that's when, if you move that up, then they'll really start to swarm the opposition and, you know, just put them under pressure constantly until they win the ball back. But with this, more of a counter press. So yeah, we have that one on to replicate that as best as we possibly can. Try and think if there's anything else. We don't need fluid formation. Yeah, one thing I should mention as well, some people who might not know this, maybe you're just an average PES player, maybe you're new to PES, etc. With players join the attack, something that I didn't do for ages and ages, didn't know about it. This is players that will come up for, say, corners and set pieces. And I always used to think it was players who would just join the attack in open play, so I put my fullbacks on. But actually, it's for players, like I say, who come up in set pieces. So just make sure you select this to bring your centre backs up, and we also put Busquets up as well. Give us more height and a threat from corners that, you know, was very handy in the gameplay. So I think that's round about it then, guys. Obviously, this is a first for covering PES, so let me know. Obviously, we're a little bit raw and stuff, and we're learning all the way as we go. So there'll be a lot of changes to this system as we go through, and the structure of these videos, etc. But certainly one that I've enjoyed doing, and I hope we can do a lot more PES. If there's a lot more interest with it as well, that will be really, really handy. Let me know any suggestions you have of improvements, any suggestions for future tactics you'd like to see me cover, etc, etc. Please do subscribe to the channel as well for more regular content from the likes of PES and FIFA, and ring the bell as well so that you get notifications every time I upload. Don't forget to check out my second channel, Brommer Ball, as well. The link for that is in the description, and give me a follow on Twitter as well, the link is also in the description. On that note, we are going to finish it off there. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you soon.